Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Investing with the Difference. And we continue with our BP focus series. And today we are going to talk about EOS Tribe. So EOS Tribe is one of the earliest members of the BP candidates. And they announced their candidacy very early. I think they've been involved in the mainnet launch. If you remember, I think some of you were around when the mainnet launch was happening. They had a lot of contributions around that time. With Ghostbusters and whatnot. And I think if you know these names, I think Steve Floyd, Eugene, they had been contributing in all the discussions, and very, very technical team, very experienced. And that's what we love about them. They have, I think, a very good website. If you have seen, I think they have done a lot of graphics for us in early days. And I still remember using those graphics to show how the EOS ecosystem is growing, the airdrops. They have a lot of focus on hardware and creating a very secure system. So we're going to talk a few things about that with Steve, who is going to join us today. And these are some of the projects they have been working on, which is, of course, Chintai, which we're going to see very soon coming to you. I think you're going to be able to participate in it. They have network wallets. They have been doing tutorials. And, of course, EOS Rise. I think this is one of the things which they have started. I find it very interesting because this is one of the most comprehensive plan they are putting together for people, for developers to go and learn about app development. And we would try to understand more about this. And finally, the lot of effort they have put in to bring originally when the voting started on EOS for helping get the EOS portal. And now for referendum system, they are taking the lead on EOS votes. So without wasting any more time, let's bring Steve from EOS Tribe and introduce him. So hi, Steve, how are you doing?
Hey, what's going on? How are you, Ram?
Doing good. So welcome to the show. I think you are one of the quiet blog producers. We don't see a lot in various channels, but I think as we know, you have been doing a lot of work since the mainnet launch days or even earlier than that. So how do you feel now with the EOS more than 100 days and we are making a lot of progress?
I think, the accomplishment of just launching a chain the way that we did, you know what I mean, with a global consensus of hundreds of people from all over the world agreeing to launch this software, like, okay, let's go. People don't understand the gravity of that. And just that in and of itself is absolutely amazing to be a part of. And, just as an accomplishment of decentralization, even with all the accusations that we're getting now with collusion and, EOS is centralized in this narrative that they want to create. I just tell people, like, even then, if you stamp out all 20, Chinese-based operations in one fell swoop geographically, the Chinese government swooped down and shut them all down, you would have a game of geographic whack-a-mole to take out all the other supporting standby nodes as they filled those reg producer slots. So those people who make those arguments, I don't think fully understand how amazing it is to even be where we are, approaching 20 million blocks produced. Some of our dApps already 2 months after mainnet launch, having more users and transactions and activity than all of the top 5 Ethereum dApps combined. You know what I mean? Like, people, don't give us credit for some of those other things. And, we've got some stuff to iron out. I can't speak to the validity of some of the recent accusations and, all that's going on. I mean, until there's actual real evidence presented. Some say that you could look on chain and see the correlation. That is yet to be analyzed, and the court of public opinion is still in. I am certainly, just like we said in the group, we're 50-50 on all of that until there's evidence. I mean, it's all just hearsay. You know what I mean?
No, I think you covered an important point, Steve. I think I'm glad you talked about this right away, because I think that a lot of people are asking about it. In fact, I did a video.
Well, it's right now, like right at the moment. It's like really bad, like right at the moment. There's all this stuff coming out.
Yes.
And I think that people need to look at shows like yours and talk to some of the people working on the network and understand the other good things that are going on. It's not all just, doom and gloom.
Sure. So I think that's what exactly I talked about, right? Means I think people are really, they're not understanding. It's very easy for main media to go and start in crypto world. Because of bear market, it has become like a mudslinging game, like who can prove one coin is worse than other. So I think we don't have to worry. I think the good thing about what I like about EOS community is people are very mature. people are actually, when I talk to people like you, people like a lot of other people who are technically competent, who have a lot of experience. And that's what is different about EOS community as compared to what I see out there in crypto world, where they are like teenagers trying to set up a shop with any new coin. So I think, so we always focus on good things. And as you said, so we have making a lot of progress, a lot of dApps are coming, a lot of
It's
usage
not perfect. It's not perfect. I don't think any of us who support EOS are saying, oh, this is perfect and we've got it all figured out. Like, no, like we're making mistakes and figuring it out. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be, some of this stuff is just going to happen. It's a part of human nature. And some of it is misunderstanding. It's cultural misunderstanding. I think it's even, people are saying it's just China, East versus West, China versus West. It's also investment class driven that has nothing to do with geographic where you're from. There's the typical like small investor or retail investor does not have the same conversation that a long-term, large high net worth investor does. They're looking at fundamentals and long-term gains and looking at somewhere to hedge, over a 2 or 3 year period of time, not over 2 or 3 months. Like day traders and people who are just trying to wait for a quick gain. So their perceptions are different. And also some people, particularly in the East, but most investment class people, what I mean by that, let me clarify, is like people who maybe came up in investment or in investment minded families who have been groomed and, often go straight to work for hedge funds and straight to work into finance at a high level. Just because of their understanding of it, versus maybe someone who's like a retail investor who grows into a more savvy investor over many years of trial and error, but doesn't study it and doesn't know burn rate and how to manage a company. They learn that out in the weeds, right? Then there's like a class of people that like study that from a very early age to become operators and how to scale up and, more of the investment class, right? So those types of people are in China too. They're everywhere.
Yes. No,
And
I
they
agree.
look at EOS as an asset. They're looking at it as this is an asset. We want influence and some level of control on this new asset if we're some of the biggest investors. You know what I mean? And they're looking at it as like completely different maybe than we understand. So I'd say all the people that have a lot of doom and gloom right now, just think about it from those different vantage points. There's an investment class involved. Some of it's cultural and just misunderstanding. And I don't even think the people engaging, it may not even be the exchanges. It might actually be some of the whales coming up with these schemes themselves that don't even know the rules. They didn't even know there was a constitution. They think it's just another token.
Sure.
So
I think, I would say that this is exactly what we talked about in many different channels. I think a lot of people got concerned, and I come from an investing background, so I completely agree with you what you are talking about. And this is what it's about education. It's about communication. I think community is very strong, as I said. And as I
like
talked
we can't
about
come out and point fingers. We can't come out and point fingers
exactly.
at the other parties because it may not even have any validity. We should be concerned. Like you saw us in the Mainnet VP channel with me being very vocal saying, guys, this is about to be really bad PR. We need to have some public statements and like something, just say something. Even Kevin and them were saying it. It's like, that's my only point. Whether or not it's true is whatever, but it's
Sure.
the court of public opinion. They're going to have a field day with us.
No, yeah, that's right. And I think I'm glad that I think all these people, all of us are talking about it and being open about it and not trying to just brush it under the carpet. And let's get back to, I think, EOS Tribe then. I think it's all for good fun. I think people love controversies, so let's avoid that. Means I think we all know that we will solve these issues. And as you said, DPOS is very strong.
That's who we are, though. If people want to get to know who we are, we've always had a lot of courage and been, never filtered ourselves from saying like what we believed or what we thought was the problem. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but we do say what we think, and we're not like filtering for favor. Like we believe that some people can do and be playing soft shoes sometimes, where you need to be direct, and just say, hey, this is a problem. Like, this is what the token holders are saying. What do we do? And I don't think that that's entirely a wrong stance, but different approaches for different people. I mean, just because that's our approach doesn't mean someone else who approaches it differently is bad either. That's just, we tend to be a little more direct and not afraid to like face issues.
Makes
generally.
sense. No, makes sense. I think that's a great thing, and I think I love to hear those things. I think while people talk about perceptions, I think it's more about being true to yourself and trying to
Right.
look inside.
Because why did we get involved in this? You know, like we're very open that we got involved in, you know, in blockchain and you know, running a node because we really believe in the foundational, like the effects that it could have on society over time, but also that we want to put our time towards something that matters. And sometimes that's not going to be perfect, you know, and EOS is not the only game in town. We will, you know, certainly run other nodes and develop and build other technologies too that work towards decentralization. For us, decentralization is the goal, not a given protocol. You know,
Yes.
and EOS was our hallmark. Like that was our first, you know, big mainstream kind of project that we were a part of, and that showed us a lot, and we learned a lot. But you know, we plan to work for many, many years in this space and help build infrastructure and build community, you know, and education around these high throughput protocols, these delegated proof of stake, proof of history, like with Solana. You know, there's lots of other projects that we're really interested in. I mean, Hashgraph, Hedera Hashgraph, even though it's patented, could have some alternative use cases for, you know, where Hyperledger fails. And we're just looking at all that stuff, you know, just like, wow, these are lots of different protocols to solve different problems. And
Oh,
it's,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
if people get so caught up in the tribalism of, you know, crypto that they really miss that it's not about your protocol or your bag. It's about like achieving decentralization so we don't have as many corrupt systems and we don't have all these intermediaries dictating, like, you know, shutting, you know, like what recently they shut like Alex Jones down. I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones personally, but I certainly believe he should be able to say what he wants, even if he's a wingnut. You know what I'm saying? Like he should be able to, you know, say what he wants and not get shut down on 4 major platforms at the same time. People ask for use cases. Investors want to know, well, what's the use case of all this? Right there. Like right there. Like people who have unpopular opinions, who have a voice, who need to be heard, like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, like Alex Jones, who might be seen as total wingnuts, but their view has a right to be heard, whether we agree with it or not. You know what I mean? And that's the type of world that we want to live in, where you could have somebody saying a disgusting opinion and you just don't even care. You just filter that out of your UI and you don't pay attention to it. Other idiots that believe in that stuff can pay attention to it. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
makes
But,
sense.
you know, it should be a more open, like free market ideals that like America was built on, not what it's become, but what we were trying to work towards, you know what I mean?
Yes,
Before
no,
we
I
got
agree. I think a lot of people think like that. I think that's what the next step is. I think that's what blockchain is for. We do believe that hopefully blockchain will solve all the censorship issues, all the controlling issues, and I think that is something you raised a good point. So coming back to, I think the one thing you talked about, the education. You have this EOS Rise project, which looks very interesting. We see that you're building very detailed education material for people. So do you want to talk through that for us and explain what is the goal for that and where is it going?
So EOS Rise was born from an event that I did back in March in San Francisco. That's actually where I met, like, you know, Eugene and a lot of the guys from the network from different regions. It was basically a meetup of different meetup group organizers from the region who were attending. I believe it was Token Fest in San Francisco was going on at that time. And I came out for that and I just threw it together at the last minute. That event, like, it became obvious that like there was a few things: onboarding for users and education for developers were like the 2 biggest problems that still are like the biggest problems now. And I brought basically the concept back in the end of June, early July, to Phil Mesnier, you know, he really enjoyed working with Eugene on the last workshop that he did at Tulip. They clicked really well and, you know, worked well together. And they both tended to click up and just work together on problems they would have with the software, like problems they would both encounter. Eugene would help Phil and vice versa quite a bit. And they just basically synced up and created this workshop series called EOS Rise. And the foundation of it is just basically end-to-end app development, from getting your node started, setting up a test net, all the activation processes that go with running the node, you know what I mean? And from a block producer perspective, all the way to just like deploying a smart contract in EOS.js, and kind of considerations and gotchas that you have to dealing with those technologies. So
Now
that's basically it. So.
Now that's exciting. I think we are seeing a lot of good content coming, and when I looked at your slides, it looked pretty good in the way it is needed today. As you said, like developers need to get started. Like as we will see that EOS ecosystem grow, we are seeing this dApps coming out. More and more people get inspired, and I'm sure there will be more people looking forward to developing on EOS. I think we are still early days. It's only like 3 months since the network has launched. So hopefully we can expand the developer base, and this is a great exercise I think you're doing. So beyond this, what are the projects you love, like from as a block producer? What are the things you are excited about right now? And where do you see your role beyond, of course, running the node securely? That is the basic thing. A lot of people talk about what are the things block producers can do, and what is the passion of EOS Tribe?
So we just came out with our Q3 infrastructure report. And that basically outlines all of our upgrades. We've basically migrated to a dedicated cloud, private cloud on a major backbone. Really, really high throughput. The specifications are on our Steam It at EOS Tribe blog. You can go there and read all the specifications from our latest report. But that will enable us to run a lot less latency. Super, super fast throughput time to actually send things. So there'll be a lot less latency. And also we're adding more endpoints for reliability, and adding like a load balancer on top of like 4 distributed, nodes that is also in the report, like how we're setting that up. And that's basically most of what we've been working on the last month. We had our wallet Taurus that is formerly the SES network wallet. Eugene didn't choose the greatest name for that one, obviously. But we rebranded to Taurus, and we ran into legal liabilities in the U.S. because of the commercial licensing in the iOS App Store, and the way that it's structured would require us to get money transmitter licenses in every single U.S. state that we operated in. So we partnered with a Switzerland-based firm and conceded some of our ownership to actually release that in the App Store sometime in the next month. It should be, we should have our kind of final submission, and it could be anywhere from a week to 3 weeks after that before it gets approved. But we're kind of at the last 30-yard line with that project. We've had it done since July with biometrics, just like the wallet Dan showed at the hackathon that I saw. It's very similar. Like a lot of the core features that are in the Block One wallet are in the Taurus wallet. We've had that done since July, but couldn't release it because of legal implications in the U.S. Thank you, regulators, for stifling innovation.
So that's great to hear. I think people have been waiting for iOS-based secure wallet, and there's a race now between you and Block.one. So let's see if Dan can release it
I'm
before
sure there's
you.
Others. Yeah, there's others working on it. So we won't be the only ones. We'll probably be one of the top 3 or 4 that come out. But if we can still be at the top of that pile, we're fine. We're fine. We're still okay with that. But then the other one is a desktop wallet called Metatron, and that is basically, we evaluated like every major desktop wallet that's available. We looked at like Scatter. We looked at, obviously Simple EOS. We looked at Gray Mass, and we tried to come up with like what is the best usability, and also what is the best security practices and code quality that we can produce, like self-describing classes and a really elegant service layer, like just the stuff you usually see in higher end US-based products as far as development goes, not poo-pooing on the efforts of any of the other developers across the world, but we are known for that. We do have a good reputation for like doing good UX, and traditionally like documenting our code really well and trying to code things in a way that's easy to work with, right? So we did that because we're thinking, well, if this is a global community, then they're going to look at our value as to what we can produce. So we have to show a best-in-class example of what we can produce. Because when we put out this open source project, this wallet, it could very well become a lot of things that we did standardized, because they're good solutions to the way we did them. We like thought them out. We took months and months to do it that way. So we thought about, like, if we're in this global community and we want to show, you know, the other side of the pond how we do things, and maybe they learn from that. And that's like the best way to communicate, because code is and design is so direct. You know what I mean? Like, you can really see what people are about, you know, with what they create. And that's kind of been our thinking with those two projects. We've been kind of black ops and haven't promoted them a whole lot. We've mentioned them a few times, but we've just been taking our time with them and making sure that those are done correctly. So the open source wallet, Metatron, we're hoping to have released at the hackathon, but if we don't, it's going to be shortly after, hopefully by the end of this year, no later than the end of this year, Q4. So we were shooting for Q2 or Q3, but have not been able to meet those deadlines with travel and everything else we've been doing. So, but it's done really well. It's very elegant, and the design is good. I'll send you some mock-ups so you can kind of see our progress on that, just so you can confirm to the community that it does exist.
No, I think we would love to see that. I think it's exciting. As I said, there are a lot of people who are waiting for better and better user interfaces. I think EOS is still in infancy. And let us hope that right now, whatever are the best tools, I'm sure more and more people will come out, and they may not remain the best tools. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm glad to hear that because the way you have already shared with us a lot of good stuff. Like, let's look at the UI you have developed for EOS Votes. Yeah, the EOS Rise itself looks so beautiful. So I think you guys have a lot of experience in UI. I'm sure more and more content will only help the community. So I think it sounds exciting, so the desktop wallet and mobile wallet. So this is great, and we would definitely look forward to them as they roll out. And I think one thing is for sure that for adoption, we need better and better UI, especially I think all of us are in crypto world. We already know a lot of things which we can use. Like we already know private key, public key, and we already are learning. But I think for new user adoption, I really think that it's an important step, and we need to continuously keep improving these tools.
I agree. I mean, that's a lot of what I've talked about, you know, from Tulip Conference to, you know, a lot of the meetups that I've talked at have been just around that, you know, the same usability problems that we face in web applications and the traditional web are inherent and with blockchain. You know, like users get stuck on the same kind of stuff. And it's not like it's, you know, I think Nathan James had a post recently that it's not blockchain UX, it's just UX.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think we are, that was a very good post actually. Means we did talk about it on Twitter, and we did had a very good discussion on, I think, various Telegram channels. And I really love this because in EOS, I think this is the only chain where you can see that people are talking about the next level. And I think we are talking about, okay, why you do not need to know blockchain. What you need to know is that you can trust an application. And that's what blockchain provides. And UX is going to be the next big thing in blockchain world. So do you want to share some more ideas on, like, I think you have been talking very passionately about UX. So where do you see us going? Like, what kind of apps you see will really bring this kind of experience forward in EOS world?
I think that API layer, like account creation, where, you know, it's just basically a little snippet of JavaScript that app developers can just put in their app. And there's basically a public faucet where whales and, you know, large stakeholders basically put up, you know, EOS for free accounts. Block producers and exchanges and people with a lot of liquidity could put up tens of thousands of EOS for like free accounts. And there can obviously be some way to mitigate people creating duplicate accounts or too many accounts, you know, one email address, one account or something like that. But we actually had a team create an account creation layer for EOS at the Wyoming hackathon that we sponsored recently. And that team has been working with us. Basically, we gave them a reward, and we're now streamlining that same infrastructure to do just that, is to actually create an API layer for account creation. So you can just go drop in a little JavaScript snippet in your dApp or in your JSX file and call it, and boom, you've got like a panel to create an account and spit it out to their email address with their active keys and everything that they need. I think the next step would be doing all that for them just with a click of a button, kind of where Nathan and, from Scatter and other people are moving towards, just like one click and there's their account.
No, that's great. I think that's something which we are really waiting for, because not everybody wants to learn crypto when they're trying to interact with the blockchain. And I think a very important point you raised.
Then you could actually have a custodial service within your dApp or through the ecosystem as a protocol layer, actually manage the keys spit out by that account creation, API layer. So if all the whales said, hey, we're staking 30, 40,000 EOS a month for free accounts, come get it. You know what I mean? Like, everybody sign up who needs an account, and they're not having to pay for accounts. And then those accounts in turn, the active and private keys, the active keys from those accounts could then be abstracted or managed, through another third-party service. So so they don't even know that it happened. They just wanted to create an account. They created an email. The private keys were managed through a LastPass or, some type of mechanism to save the recovery key for that. And then a service basically to a centralized service of some kind if they want to delegate to that. And maybe even some of that could be done on chain. So they know through advanced encryption standards in the memo. There's all kinds of, I don't know where that will go in just the next 12 to 18 months, just based on what I see in the ecosystem now, where that particular UX, I think EOS will have some of the best usability on blockchain by comparison, based on what I'm seeing, what I saw at the hackathon, the ideas that people are working on. I think like Ash Oro and his team did Chestnut, which is like kind of a custodial account service, just like I talked about. It can be subscription based, or you don't want to deal with the private keys. You don't want to deal with all that. You just want to create an account to go use EOS Bet. And there's a faucet and a service to do it, all that for you end to end within dApps, like within the dApp itself. So if you want to know what that might look like, something like that, where it's as easy as account creation with like Facebook login, on a new dApp that you sign up with.
Yes.
That's what we're going for. One click. You already have the information somewhere, a service that stored it. You have preferred transactions that are secure, that that are trustworthy. You can make those transactions repeatably and regularly. You know what I mean? So that's where I see it headed as far as like usability, is the onboarding. The very first thing we need to solve and figure out and get down good would be, just user accounts and onboarding.
So that's very exciting, actually. Means now I think about it, means you talked about custodian services for these keys. That's a pretty great idea. Maybe it can be decentralized also at some point with another service which can be added to it. But it's a great thing. Like, I think we are not even thinking about it, but as I hear you, and these are the kind of things which EOS community is talking about, and I'm very excited to hear all these things, because this is something which will really change the way people think about blockchain. And this is, I think, one of the things we are focusing on, right? Means the next generation, like this is what we're doing. Like, we're doing a conference on November 12th in scaling blockchain, and I'm happy. I think we just talked about it, that you're going to come in and you will be able to join us. So these are the kind of things we want to talk to new people who are still early days in blockchain. They don't want to just focus on, oh, this is too complex for me. And I think for the next generation of adoption, we do need these tools. And I'm great. It's great to hear.
That's what's so amazing, though, is you're not talking like, if I was in Bitcoin or Ethereum, I would be thinking, well, we can accomplish this over the next 3 or 4 years, right? I'm seeing that this is probably going to happen right before our eyes in the next probably 12 to 18 months or 2 years. Like half or a third of the time, all these developments are happening much faster on EOS. That's the narrative that people don't understand. If they knew how much stuff is being built, how quickly it's being built, I think people would have a little more faith. You know what I mean? And just reading the bad review or the bad press that people see coming out. And I'm not just saying that as a block producer. I really believe this technology is going to be one of the top 5 protocols that, that rule them all. You know what I mean? That we all use, these public chains, and the core technology that we use to scale this stuff. EOS is one of the flavors, and what it's going to look like. It's not perfect. We're not shilling it and saying that it's like absolutely perfect. We're in the early days. Like, all of us who are participants openly admit there are system flaws. There are things we need to address. You know what I'm saying? But it's a damn good first start for where we're at, where we were just 2 or 3 years ago with throughput. Now we can do all of those things on chain. These social dApps that we could never have built, that simply weren't possible without state channels and a lot of engineering to get anywhere near the throughput that we have right on chain, with EOS. And I think that the investors and the people out there should think about that when they, look closer at fundamentals. Don't just believe the news cycle. In the short term, if you're a short-term investor, certainly I understand you got to follow news cycles. But if you're a longer-term investor, I would not get so wound up about all this stuff right now. You know what I mean? So.
I understand. I think this is. I'm sorry. So yeah, I think this is great. This is something which we really need. I think people have to talk about adoption. Then these are the very important things. So let's jump the gears and talk about. We did see a tweet from EOS Tribe talking about some rockets or some satellites being launched. So do you want to go through that?
That's an explore. That's our legacy project. We always get a lot of crap from people for, oh, you guys are going to put a producing node in the, in space. No, we're putting a backup node, a low, orbit, small sat backup node. We know that there's a lot of latency. We know it's not something that you could run with production, but just so people throughout the world could get access if there's no internet connection. We thought that would be a great legacy, a 3 to 5 year project in the history of EOS. If they can do it, with Bitcoin and those guys can put something together like that maybe we could too. But we're still just exploring it. We've talked with Phil Mesnier and people who've worked with embedded systems and aerospace, and it's kind of 50-50 at this phase. We don't know 100% if it's going to be possible. If it is, we will explore it more and go into it full throttle. If it's not possible, we'll come out with a public statement and say, hey, these types of blockchains don't currently work. We're waiting for this type of technology for it to happen. So it was more of just trying to understand, how would we do that? How would we do that with EOS? If they're doing it with Bitcoin, they only have 40 transactions. How would we do that with EOS? Is it possible? And, I'll leave that to the rocket scientists, and the developers and the engineers, people like Eugene and his network are looking into that to put out kind of our first official exploratory statement on how we believe it would be done, and then who's crazy enough to join us. And that's coming out the end of this year, early next year, based on the last 4 or 5 months of us just asking questions. Well, smarter than us.
Great.
So hopefully.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's think big. We wanted to interject that into the lexicon, even if we discover that it can't be done. And, we've got another 5 years to wait until the technology's there to handle the latency. Whatever, just the fact that we're out there, putting out these big ideas for EOS. I think that everyone should think that way who's a part of the network and believes in, EOS, is to not get caught up with these times of FUD and the bear market. It's brutal, but when the token price is 3 times up and, it's crypto spring again, then it's all peace and love. Just learn to be more consistent, because we look bad. We look bad in those cycles. Think big. Let's put a satellite in space. Let's try to actually have EOS as seen as one of the top projects, in the ecosystem legitimately, rather than the negativity that we've been seeing from some of the other protocols. We have
great, I think. Yeah, I really love this optimism, I think, Steve. So let me give you another example, right? When I'm in Silicon Valley, I see this Google launching balloons for internet through balloons.
Well, hold on a minute. Hold on. I know exactly what you're saying. Hold on. Yeah. Let's not be a cult either. Let's not be idealists and a technology cult either. Let's be pragmatic and realistic about our situation. EOS has some problems. We've got a lot of work to do. So I know what you're going with, the big balloons and the big hype machine. It's like, if you're in Silicon Valley, that's the name of the game. But we do not want to be that. If you talk to the people on the network, a lot of these guys are pretty savvy. They're not bought into the hype cycle. They're pretty realistic about what can and can't be done. And we just try to generally be optimistic and not spread a bunch of negativity, because people look to us as the block producers on the network. If you guys don't have faith, then none of us do, right? So
I agree. No, I think, as I said, right, I mean, these are like short-term problems, and I'm sure we will get through that because of technology, because of the way it's heading. What I was getting to is that I think nobody thought about those things earlier when the internet started. So looking forward is always good. I don't think anybody thought about having access to internet where there is no wires possible, or where. So I think these problems are being looked at and being solved, and you are thinking ahead and putting this, running a node while it's ambitious. From a satellite, I think it maybe become like a very basic thing. But if the blockchain becomes a utility which every day you need, I think it's not too far that we will need these services. Just like I was highlighting that Google and Facebook are trying to give internet to people because it's now very basic. Even if you are not in a dense population or where you can have these services. So it's a great thing. I think we are very excited. I think these are the kind of things which we love to hear in EOS community, and block producers like you who have the knowledge, the technical knowledge, and future vision, what we can make out of this blockchain.
That's probably what I would convey to your audience the most, is that, we do have, a vision, that we see for the network over the next 2 or 3 years, and we have a path to get there. And, that's a lot of what we're out soliciting in China and Europe, and sharing our vision with people that we know and trust more than just going out and running out with every idea that we come up with, and then nothing happens with those ideas. We're slimming down to 3 or 4 core. The EOS tutorial site, EOS Rise work together, because all of our documentation, public facing for EOS Rise, will be put on EOS tutorials. So we already have about 70 or 80 FAQs and Google Docs that we're in the process of porting over to that site. That was a site that was abandoned by the EOS Austin organizer, who they had changed hands with their organizer, and us and EOS Detroit are picking up the slack on that project. We're putting to rest a project, the Valor Fund, which was a community project to help raise a relief fund for the victims, the token holders who had been scammed, and had their accounts frozen, the 25 accounts. And that grew into a much larger discussion of how arbitration of any arbitration forum would confirm that a user was actually, without revealing their identity, with a zero knowledge proof mechanism of some kind to confirm their case number, but without, revealing, yes, this is them, but we're not giving you their ID or anything that would make us liable. We're just giving you an encrypted memo with their case number, and you can confirm the case number, but no one else will see that on chain. So that was our hurdle, is the technology wasn't quite there yet for us to even enable that. So also we had a conundrum with handling any kind of public funds that could be interpreted as a form of vote buying and incentive, because we're handling a public fund and then giving that back to high net worth token holders. So, and we couldn't find any public custodians. So that project, we're just going to make a worker proposal and see who steps forward in the community who wants to help run a public fund for relief for these type of bad PR scenarios. Because it is a good idea. We do need to do it. But how that's done is tricky. It really is. We discovered that in trying to do that. Spent a ton of time, a month and a half, 2 months, off and on, just working on that project, just to discover there wasn't much we could do, ourselves, what I mean, other than just giving out money to people directly. And that's I'm sure people would line up for that. So. But
I think, I agree with you. I think these are all important things, and there are a lot of thought going into it, and I really see a lot of good work being put in.
The point I'm trying to make is that not every project that you go out to try to do for the community necessarily works or pans out the way that you want, or has the desired outcome. So you have to pivot. You have to put your energies towards things that matter. And I think we've gone through a period where we just tried to help every single community project we could and help a lot of people. and now the next, like the last quarter of this year, the first quarter of next year. And why people have seen us a little more silent is because we're working on more internal projects like our new website, our new value proposition, our new wallets, things that are more internally focused, not externally focused for the network. Because we've done so much of that, we feel like, hey, we've put out a lot of free work. At this point, we could just focus on our BP operation and make sure that we communicate better, particularly in Asia, where we've been, and that's an area that we admit where we've been deficient. These are just all things that you learn as a business, areas you need to adjust, things that you may be putting a lot of focus on that you need to just slim back on. And for us, that's just like this next 3 to 6 months is just focusing on more execution and following through on the existing, like most important 4 or 5 core projects that we have that line up with our light value, our unique value proposition for the networks.
Oh, that's great. I think, Steve, this is great to hear. And I am glad that you came to our show and talked about all these great ideas and, of course, the future. And especially, I think, taking this issue up front and talking about what we are facing and how this can be resolved. I think these are the kind of things which we want from block producers. So any final words before we conclude the show for the audience on how they should see EOS Tribe and what we can expect from you? Please feel free to share with us.
Absolutely. I will try to make sure to send you regular updates. We're trying to make sure that all the proxies who vote for us have regular updates for their voters, just so you guys can get relevant links, new posts, like our infrastructure that we just developed. What did we buy? How is it superior to other infrastructures? Like what's going to be the benefit for the network? All that kind of stuff. Because that's what I'm realizing is if you want to get elected as a block producer, just communicate with the token holders what your value is more directly. Like have a reporting model, just like you would if you were, a public company or something. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that we're seeing enough proactive reporting. Like guys like Crypto Lions and ourselves have been some of the only people, this, to even post a financial report.
That's right. I think transparency has been one of the key issues in DPOS. Right, that is something which is needed because you're talking about delegates you are assigning your trust. And I really love this, and I think this is one of the things you touched upon. It's very important, and I hope that this kind of culture keeps growing and you spread the word.
Because you're delegating your trust. Like you guys are literally putting hundreds of thousands of tokens on the line for these 20, 30 organizations. And you just want to know, like, one, are they competent? Can they do the job? But then once you get beyond that, what's their vision? And are they really telling me what they have going on? Are they communicating with me? Are they just taking rewards and going around and traveling? So it's like we really want to be able to show the GitHub commits and show these projects and things that we've shipped. And you guys who vote for us to be like, man, they give us the goods. When they do something, we're the first to know. And that's an area that it's all the proxies out there that vote for us, including yourself, that we're trying to make an effort, each month to just give you a full update, little PDF of like where we're at. So you can hand that off to your investors as well. So.
No, that's great. I think it was a great talking to you, Steve. It's a very different perspective from what we have used to. I think thanks for this discussion.
How do you think I have a different perspective? So
I think I'll tell you the different perspective, because we can spend a few more minutes. So let me tell you is about being very transparent, being open about the issues and taking them head on. And being open to sharing these details, because I remember we had this discussion in the proxy channel in Telegram, and we talked about providing these kind of details. I think I'm really glad that you are bringing this front, that you want to share these details, how your financials, what you're really doing. I think right now we have issues where BPs have not even declared their ownership. They have not even declared, and they are in top 21, and they are BPs. We need to educate the audience and or everybody that how this DPOS should work and how it was meant to be work. And we need to make changes. I think if you talk about it, people like you, I think you're talking about, and not in a confrontational way, but by coming out in front and saying that you are going to share it, and maybe you will encourage others to do it. And this is a very important thing. And that's what I'm saying is very different from what I'm hearing from all the block producers out there.
I mean, they have their position. that's the difficult thing. And that's the other thing that I think anybody who doesn't understand this, there are real cultural differences and things that are just not being understood. They're just misunderstandings. I think is like a significant part of it is 50%. Maybe there is some collusion. Maybe there isn't. I'm not the judge or jury of any of that. I can't make a statement to anyone viewing this as to whether or not it's real or fake. I have no idea. Like I can go look on chain and see, you can correlate data for days. I'm not a data scientist. I'll leave it to people smarter than me to find out, if there is any wrongdoing. But whether there is or whether there isn't, that everyone in the network right now just needs to understand that these are just, a lot of it's like cultural differences and misunderstanding. It like really is. And it's hard for me to admit that as a US, I'm from Dallas, like I'm a stereotypical American, guy, right? And I would totally admit I don't understand like the culture sometimes and what's being said. And I think that same feeling is from people from Asia, sometimes from me in the West, guys like me. We just don't understand each other. And if we can get past that and find a common ground, that's one of the great things about EOS is it's this globally distributed digital nation, for us to like be able to build those relationships that normally we wouldn't be able to. You know what I mean? Like, when have you ever seen this? Like, I was noticing this in London, me, a white guy, Irish German from Dallas, Sudeep, an Indian guy who lives in Ukraine, and Han, a guy from, a Korean guy from Seoul, all hanging out together, having the same type of cultural conversation about EOS. Like, we're part of this culture, EOS, not we're a part of our individual where we're from, our nationalist views, right? All that washed away. And most of our views were around our views for the world and EOS. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's something that people should really think a lot about. That's the other side of this.
That's great to hear, Steve. I think this is exactly what we talk about. And I think I've been talking about this on my channel. Like, we need to just communicate better, get these things. And great for share. Like, we really love all your thoughts you shared with us today. And we wish you all the best in all your BP operations and all the great projects. And thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.